I am woman, hear me roar. Numbers too big to ignore.
Whereas Adam was formed from the dust of the ground, the text describes Eve as being formed from one of the man's ribs. Why this difference? Is there any significance to these two separate materials being used by God in the formation of the first human pair? If so, what is it? If not, why the distinction? It has become customary for many in recent years to point to the Sumerian Delmian poem as being the best way to explain this association of Eve with a rib. The Sumerian name for rib is Ti. But the Sumerian word Ti also means to make alive. These two facts are necessary background information to understand the myth that was told in Sumer. It happened that the Sumerian water god, Enki, fell sick, with 8 of his organs or bodily parts being affected. A fox promised, if properly rewarded, to bring back the great mother goddess Ninhursag, who had disappeared after an argument with Enki. Upon her reappearance she brought into existence 8 corresponding healing deities, and Enki was restored in time. In order to heal Enki's rib, the goddess created Ninti, the Lady of the Rib, which may also be translated as the Lady who makes alive. Now it is true that Adam called the woman that God had formed from his rib Eve, because she would become the mother of all the living. Samuel Noah Kramer commented, "It was this, one of the most ancient of literary puns, which was carried over and perpetuated in the biblical paradise story, although here, of course, it loses its validity, since the Hebrew word for rib, Salah, and that for who makes alive, Hoveh, have nothing in common." The association of Eve with a rib and the living appear to be the common features in both the Sumerian and the biblical accounts. In that regard, the Sumerian myth may well be a garbled record of the same oral tradition about the inception of the human race. But the explanation in Sumer, of course, is set in an account with numerous deities and with petty quarrels and misadventures. But no real explanation has been achieved as yet. It is not necessary to assume that the Hebrew wanted to promote the same pun that the Sumerian Delmian poem did. The point of the Hebrew story actually takes off in another direction. In fact, Genesis chapter 2 verse 19 had just noted the animals had also been formed out of the ground. This only emphasized the fact that Adam lacked the kind of companion he needed. In order to teach the close connection that woman has with man, the text does not say that God also created her from the ground or the dust of the ground. Instead, she came from Adam's side. Thus the phrase,
"This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh,"
pointed not only to the woman's origin, but also to the closeness of her marriage relationship and the partnership she was to share with her mate. There is a popular myth that a woman has more ribs than a man, which is founded on a wrong interpretation of Genesis 2:21-23. Many have erroneously assumed that since one rib was taken out of Adam to form Eve, then a woman has more ribs than a man. But this theory falls apart very quickly when you study the original Hebrew, in which the Old Testament Bible was written. The English word rib is the transliterated Hebrew word salah. It means side, not an actual rib. In other words, when God performed a miraculous surgery on Adam in order to create Eve, he took Adam's entire side to do so, not just one rib. Afterwards, God also apparently recreated an entire new side for Adam to replace the void that was left and closed it up again in its place. Thus, as some of the reformers put it, woman was not taken from man's feet, as if she were beneath him, or from his head, as if she were over him, but from his side, as an equal with him. The point is that man and woman together share a commonality and partnership observed nowhere else in the created order. To emphasize this closeness, God actually took a real part from the side of the man, as he brought to life for the first time this new creation called woman.
And I know too much to go back and pretend, 'cause I heard it all before. I've been down there on the floor. No one's ever gonna keep me down again.
How do you defend that position? The gender choice was an incidental of the incarnation, and not one of any specific revelatory import. Think about the other incidentals. 1. Jesus was also born in a manger cave. Would that fact have devalued being born in a hospital or home? Probably not. 2. Jesus was also a carpenter. Does that choosing devalue all other occupations? Probably not. 3. Jesus was born in the 1st century. Does that devalue those born at other times in history? Probably not. 4. Jesus was Jewish. Does that devalue Chinese or Anglo-Saxons? Probably not. 5. Jesus was raised in Nazareth. Does that devalue Jerusalem? Probably not. The list could go on, with each detail being examined for its incidental character. Where this nets out is that choosing in regards to the incarnation does not seem to be related to valuation at all. To argue that it was positively correlated would require a supporting argument, which I have not seen so far. There was another point on the incarnation that struck me odd. If choice were always linked to valuation, then God was not really very free in his choices. I find it difficult to believe that God could not have chosen without being required to communicate valuation in the process. What this position would mean is that whatever form, wherein God chose to appear required God to devalue everything else. Not only is this a questionable ethical principle, it is certainly odd to place such a constraint on God's sovereign action, theologically speaking. So, it would seem that the incarnation cannot be used to support choice implies valuation devaluation.
Hannah Adams, one of the first women to become a historical and religious writer in America. A student of both Latin and Greek, she lived near Boston, and is remembered for her Dictionary of Religion, History of the Jews, and History of New England.